We still have to wait a little bit for the announcement of the new Assassin's Creed. I still think it's possible that we see it for the first time during the PlayStation 5 reveal event that will likely happen before E3, or maybe they choose the Xbox stage instead. Like, what we know is that Ubisoft has one big unannounced game planned for October, November or December of this year, so very high chance it's the new Assassin's Creed that the Black Flag and Origins team is working on. But there have been some recent developments at the other Assassin's Creed studio, Ubisoft Quebec. Although, is it still an Assassin's Creed studio? There are really quite a lot of interesting things to discuss about the future of the franchise and the release schedule that we will see moving forward. So let's get into it. A like on the video would be super appreciated, and let's go. If you did not participate in my February giveaway for a 2020 game of your choice on your platform of choice, then there is still time. Just follow the link in the pinned comment for a chance to win. Would be nice if you are a subscriber of the channel as well before you enter, and I will send an email to the winner on March 1st. I think you likely agree, right, that Ubisoft has brought a nice refresh to the Assassin's Creed series after taking the year off in 2016. Although year off, I always like to remind people that we still had the $50 Ezio collection that included remastered versions of AZ2, Brotherhood and Revelations for the PS4 and Xbox One. So yes, they keep releasing these games at the end of each year, and in 2017 we had Origins, and one of the biggest challenges for Origins as part of that refresh was the combat, according to John Guedon, the creative director on that game, focusing on the hitboxes where swinging a weapon around would really deal damage if enemies were nearby. An amazing change, and the execution was really good as well. Like, the gameplay in Origins and Odyssey, in my opinion, is a huge step up compared to the previous games. And you by the way see footage here of the GDC panel from Sean where he discusses the 10-year evolution of the series. I will leave a link to that panel in the video description. And yeah, after Origins we of course had Odyssey, and then really in 2019 we had the first holiday period without a big Assassin's Creed release since Assassin's Creed 2 in 2009. Unless you count the Rebel collection for the Switch, that was $50. Okay, you could count that, but let's just put it this way, there was nothing for PS4, PC and Xbox One. So then 2020 we do have a PS4, PC and Xbox One game, and also likely a next-gen game with the Viking Assassin's Creed. But yeah, in 2018 it was already pretty clear who would be making the new Assassin's Creed, and now we already have a great idea as well, but it's very unclear though what will happen after this. During the GDC panel, Jean showed this image of the multi-core teams working on Assassin's Creed that I showed you as well in previous videos, and what we already saw was the interesting blank space after Syndicate for Quebec. We already knew that the Unity team, so Montreal 1, was disbanded after that game came out, with many leads leaving. Singapore was and is still working on Skull and Bones, and well, Montreal 2 only worked on Assassin's Creed 3 from the looks of it. So yes, looking at this image at the start of 2018, Quebec made the most sense, and it became true. After Syndicate, they immediately worked on Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But yeah, the team that made Odyssey did not directly go and work on the new Assassin's Creed after that project. We know they're working on Gods and Monsters, as the teaser trailer showed, and during an interview at E3 I learned that actually the full team that brought us that amazing Greek adventure is now on this more mythology focused game. And during E3 developers were also still working on the fate of Atlantis, and after they finished the final episode they would also join the Gods and Monsters team. So that core Quebec team can be working on the next Assassin's Creed. They will have their hands full with Gods and Monsters until that game releases at the end of this year or in early 2021. And I had a theory last year that maybe BioWare veteran Mike Laidlaw, who worked on many Dragon Age games, Mass Effect and Jade Empire, would lead this new Assassin's Creed after the Viking game, because with his RPG experience he could totally evolve the series even more in the direction that Ubisoft is taking. So So he joined Ubisoft Quebec at the end of 2018, right after the development of Odyssey, and he also consulted on the game, so gave advice to Ubisoft Quebec. Big news, Ubisoft made a big deal about this, but yeah, you do see that the article is from the Wayback Machine, because I could not find it on the Ubisoft Quebec website anymore. On LinkedIn, Mike made the announcement post as well, where he mentioned that he cannot discuss exactly what he is doing, but I will say it's exciting enough to make me move halfway across the continent. So again, a pretty big deal, also a really nice get for Ubisoft Quebec. He has a ton of experience, but now, a little over a year later, he announces that he quit Ubisoft. January 31st, 2020 was his last day, as he announced on Twitter. So whoa, something went wrong. Luckily we got Jason Schreier, who of course proved many times before that he has sources at Ubisoft. He chimed in on Reset Era, saying that his project was cancelled a few months ago during the Ubisoft overall that I talked about on Split Screen back then. And Split Screen is the Kotaku podcast. I will leave a link to that in the video description, totally worth listening to. Maybe you remember this story, we already discussed it here as well on the channel, that after the disappointing sales of Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Ubisoft completely changed their mentality, as the PlayStation Lifestyle article also summarizes. All their games now have to have a unique feature that sets them apart, something that Breakpoint clearly of course lacked. So this major change already led to the cancellation of a big Destiny-like game from the Watch Dogs 2 developers that they were working on for 3 years. So 3 years of work and money gone. Insane. Well, it seems like the project that Mike Laidlaw and his team worked on for the last year had the same fate. So yes, that's why he likely left. I mean, the project that he joined the studio for does not exist anymore. Again, I first thought that he might have been working on the new Assassin's Creed that we would see after the Viking game. But it would be wild to cancel an Assassin's Creed game because it's just too important, and Ubisoft knows how to release those games by now, you would think, right? It's now way more likely that he was working on his own new IP, an RPG, and maybe that was just too similar to what Assassin's Creed was trying to do, so that's why they cancelled it. And that's pretty sad for Mike, because he worked on Dragon Age 4 before this at BioWare, and that got cancelled in the end too. Hopefully he will find a new place soon. But yeah, that does bring us back to the future of the Assassin's Creed series after the Viking game, because I think there's a very small chance that Ubisoft Quebec is working on the next Assassin's Creed, with again most people working on Gods and Monsters and a big project being cancelled. Quebec is a big studio though, so I'm sure they're doing more than only Gods and Monsters. Like Marc-Alexis Cote, who announced that game at E3, is now an executive producer since November 2019 on something else, on something unannounced. While before this, he was a senior producer on Gods and Monsters and Odyssey. Overall, he has a ton of experience working on the Assassin's Creed franchise, like he was a creative director on Syndicate, game director on Assassin's Creed 3, and worked on the DLC for that game and Brotherhood as well. Maybe he's now preparing the future of Assassin's Creed at Quebec, but again, if that is the case, then we should not expect anything anytime soon. It seems very clear that a new Assassin's Creed in 2021, so 1 year after the Viking game, is very unlikely. And I would actually be fine with that if it means that this new Assassin's Creed will be supported for longer. There were still some cool things they could have done with Origins, like by the time that post-launch content plan ended, I wasn't done with the game yet. But they obviously stopped to build appetite for Odyssey that was announced 1 month after the Origins post-launch content stopped. Like releasing a DLC for Origins after Odyssey is announced, it's weird because you want all the focus on this new game. Ubisoft saw big success with the post-launch content for Odyssey, with sales outpacing Origins as well. And this was because that post-launch was bigger and lasted way longer. So I totally expect something similar for the Viking Assassin's Creed. So then we are looking at a 2022 release for the new game at the earliest, I think. I would not be surprised if this was also a next-gen only game. Ubisoft felt the need to release Rogue in 2014 alongside Unity because it was 1 year after the PS4 and Xbox One came out, so not a lot of people had a next-gen system and were still playing on their PS3 and 360. In 2022, the PS5 and Series X will be out for 2 years and are likely at around the 50 million units combined already. So that should be enough for a true next-gen Assassin's Creed. Maybe again by Ubisoft Montreal, and then I'm not talking about the Viking game, but another team inside that massive studio. And they had it before, or actually they had 3 core teams inside Montreal working on Assassin's Creed. Sure, the scope of the games is way larger now than it was back then, but it does show you that they might be able to go back to that structure. Also, one Ubisoft employee who was in the Watch Dogs 2 team and working on that cancelled Destiny type of game says that the studio currently has 15 different projects at the same time right now. Maybe instead of 1, they have 2 Assassin's Creed projects in the works at Montreal. Jean Godin is, as of April 2018, a creative director on an unannounced game, looking at his LinkedIn page. And it would actually be weird if he was a creative director on the Viking Assassin's Creed, because Ashraf, the game director on Black Flag and Origins, switched to being a creative director now on the project that he is working on and that he started immediately after Origins came out. And the creative director is one of the highest positions on a game, and I don't think that you can have 2 of them on the same project in the same building at the same time. So that is very interesting to say the least, but we will know soon enough when they announce the Viking game and we see that they are both involved. Then this theory is not correct. The development pipelines of these Assassin's Creed games is really fascinating. Like, for example, Unity was in development even before Black Flag started, while it of course launched 1 year after Black Flag came out. So maybe while working on this Viking game, they are already planning the next gen Assassin's Creed for 2022, and Sean might be the creative director on that game instead of the Viking game. Again, it seems crazy, I totally agree. You would think that everyone at Ubisoft Montreal working on Assassin's Creed is hard at work to finish the Viking game on time, but on the other hand, if Ubisoft wants to release a new Assassin's Creed 2 years after Assassin's Creed 5 or V or whatever they will call it, then they have to be working on it right now. And again, it doesn't seem to be Quebec, so then there are not a lot of options left. I want to explore this topic a little bit more in the future, so keep it locked for that. But for now, I'm curious to hear what you think about this. What is your ideal release schedule for these Assassin's Creed games? Every other year, or what we saw with this Mythology trilogy, so 2 back to back, and then the next one 2 years later. Again, I'm curious to hear what you think. It is just important to remember that Assassin's Creed was this big yearly franchise for Ubisoft, and that both Origins and Odyssey did very well. So I feel it's in their best interest to release these new games as quick as possible, without of course creating a same situation as we had with Syndicate and Unity. Totally subscribe for everything on the new Assassin's Creed. When we have news and rumors, I will of course let you know here on the channel. Like this video to support the channel, and check out my previous video on big changes happening inside Ubisoft. So more on those cancellations and stuff, and how this impacts the future of Assassin's Creed. For now though, I will speak to you next time, and goodbye.